I'm here with artist Jodi Ohl, and Jodi, you've gone to the birds.
That's what people say. Yeah, well, actually, like one of my favorite things to do in the morning is just to have a leisurely cup of coffee out my deck, and I have so many birds that come and visit. It's hard not to be inspired. So grab my journal, grab my coffee, and I'll just make some, sketches. And I don't know.
I know, seeing one of your beautiful sketches in your book right there. Just a little quick little doodly sketch there, just something.
I mean, it's not exactly like the birds that come to visit. Just a loose sketch, and they'll inspire my future painting. So I brought a variety of 6x6 quirky birds, and I thought I'd show you a little bit how to make them.
Let's do it.
All right, let's roll. So basically, I'll start with a pre-gessoed wooden board.
And you're using black gesso.
I do.
Some people only think that gesso comes in white.
No, it comes in multiple colors. I like black because I don't know if you can tell, but it kind of gives a more jewel tone finish. So it's deeper, richer. If you want brighter colors, use white. So it's very optional. Then I like to take my paint and I use a silicone scraper, and I just kind of.
Are you just using regular acrylic?
Yeah, just regular acrylic, and I like to kind of get some interesting marks by just kind of scraping on my paint.
And your goal is obviously not to cover the black completely.
Not really. I'm looking just for some initial texture. So you can't go wrong. You can put as much as a little. You could do paint splatters. You could do water droplets.
So I notice you're using a white and an off-white.
Yes, I like to do that first because of the black. And a lot of times I use transparent colors. So the white will give the transparent colors on top a little bit of body. So do that, and then I might, add some extra texture by taking one of these wallpaper.
Ooh, textured wallpaper is such a fun surface. And when you stamp it or push it into here, is that what you'd be doing?
Yeah, I would do that over top of it. You can also do collage. So those are a couple options. So basically, like the next step, after you do like the texture and the collage, let's just go ahead and show you how this would look, because I think that's kind of fun.
Right. The thing is, there's so many things that can be stamps besides stamps.
Exactly.
And I think people forget that all sorts of kitchen supplies, all kinds of household items, tubes, anything.
Well, that's what I brought along to you.
And look how beautiful that flower pattern is from that textured wallpaper.
Yes, and I noticed like the heat from the lights are actually drying my paint a little bit. So I'm gonna add a little bit of water just to kind of give you a little bit,
reactivate and get it going.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put this in a couple of random different places. Like you mentioned, you can use tubes, you can use cups. You just get some texture, get some mark making, just have fun. A lot of times I'll like to use crayons, I'll use pencils to write some information. You can grab that.
Yep.
So you can kind of see like over here, like I just did some random scribbles on this piece. Sometimes like I like to, on top of like being inspired by the birds or just thinking about my day, a lot of times I'll get my frustrations out, kind of talk a little bit about, what your basically your journal on top of your paper, on the background of your
I always think that
surface.
there's so many things that you do in your journal that you can easily apply to a canvas.
Exactly. So after I do that, then I'll start getting a base layer of color. So you can kind of see where I'm just mishmashing, making textural marks. Grab my journal back, and then I'll basically just kind of draw out. And I am using, so this is kind of like a China marker, but not really. So
for people who don't know what a China marker is, it's sometimes also called a grease pencil because it will write on top of ceramic, it will write on top of all kinds of things, and people used to use it to mark the price of China.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
so
that's why it's called that.
So the next step after you do your drawing, you're just going to basically block in your color. So here's one that I did where I blocked in my color.
So just to be clear, because it seems, it's hard to imagine that this turns into this. You haven't actually painted completely over the collage.
No,
I can still see
the collage.
Would you just show us a little bit of on here so that we understand how thick the paint is, how much water you're adding?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So I am adding a little bit of water, of course, and I'm going to take this white and this teal, and I am just going to quickly.
So you're painting out the background, but not in a completely opaque way. It's definitely a translucent layer. I can see the polka dot coming through.
Yep.
You basically are just trying to control a little bit more where the viewer's eye is going.
Exactly. You're kind of doing a negative painting at this point. Now, of course, you like the old story goes, don't fall in love with your backgrounds too quickly, because if there's a favorite part of your background, it may get, painted over.
Covered up, and that's okay, because the good news is the more that you practice, the more that it becomes a daily thing that you do, then you know there's another one. So now I can see where that came from.
Exactly. So, and then you can use your finger just to blend.
It strikes me that this is part of the background you decided to leave.
I know. Well, I was thinking, I think I might make a little bit of more of a design in the background on top of that. So even on your backgrounds, you can kind of go to, actually, let's grab this pink one over here. And that kind of gives you an idea where I might have been this one over
the middle.
Yeah.
Here you go.
So I like the birds to be the star of the show, so I don't usually go too crazy with the backgrounds, but I will do some things like that. I was thinking I was probably going to do some polka dots in the background. So, and this one I just kind of used, again, the drawing pencil to add some polka dots. You could doll up your birds by, adding some stripes.
Well, let's dial up this bird.
Let's dial it up.
Let's dial it up.
Let's do it. All right. So again, let's try to add some polka dots.
Now I see you could add your favorite. If you like stamps, you can add stamps.
Absolutely.
If you like stencils, you can add stencils. If you like drawing, you can add drawing. If you like this is one of those things that really you can personalize for how you like to work.
Right. And I don't know if you happen to notice, but all these are in the same color family. And when I do one, I actually do about 6.
No, I'm totally the same way. I work on multiple canvases at the same time, especially when it's in layers and you have to wait for things to dry.
Exactly, because then if I'm at the point where, like, oh, well, this guy needs a little bit more pink over here, I can actually go ahead and do that. Like keep on playing between the different birds. So.
Do you have any tips for, these are obviously fantastical birds, and you've probably drawn so many birds that you're able to get more and more fantastical.
Right.
Do you have tips for people about loosening up about this kind of stuff and getting to that place?
Yeah, and one thing is how you hold your pencil, try to hold it really loosely. Get rid of the idea of perfection because it actually looks
totally overrated.
It's totally overrated. And don't be afraid to make mistakes because if something doesn't come out, number one, you can paint over it. Number two,
paint is so forgiving because you can always cover it up.
Now I want to show you, look at this. So as I'm drawing this, if I want a little bit of a smudge, I can do that. And on my favorite kind of shadowing color, actually, let's get some water on there. I was going to say quinacridone gold.
Yes. Everybody knows it's the best color on earth because it really is like an amazing translucent color. And it looks so brown, but it goes on so orange, and then it makes everything look great.
So we're just giving this guy a little bit more depth in under his eyes. We can jazz it up in a lot of different ways. I've brought my paint markers. You could add paint markers. We can use crayons. We can smudge
How do you make a choice about which material you're going to? Oh, show us some fine liners. I love fine liners.
My last little trick, I used to use like pens to decorate and add some lines, but now I've been using the fine liners on these little guys.
So what this is either paint or ink that's fairly thin with a very narrow tip. That's why it's called a fine liner.
Yes, and there's like a little pointy thing that goes in the tip of that, so it keeps
it unclogged.
Now, just like anything, if you don't use it in a while, it may clog up. So I usually put my first mark on my palette paper. Again, I'm using this. The tip from me is to hold it low and at an angle and push.
Low and at an angle. Yes. I've always held it sort of almost more vertically.
Well, if you do that, like last time,
it splooges out.
So it may be a little bit hard to come out that way, but it doesn't come out quite as fast. So I'm just going to kind of go around, and I have something on my thing that's drying.
This is so cool, and if we look over at some of the finished ones, I can see how much that fine line
just
makes a huge difference. Thank you, Jodi.
Exactly. Thank you for having me.